Hey, everybody. How friends? We have a dirty martini because
Oh,
Boston, you're home.
please. I just
Cheers.
have a latte. So,
Well, I have blue tea stuffed olives, so.
come on.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody
That's
gave
what we do in
me
North
a dirty
Carolina.
martini. It's too early. I mean, is it pandemic time, I guess? So whatever. We don't even know what day it is, let alone what time it is.
Oh, it's been crazy. So Hank Phillippi Ryan, I'm originally from Boston, as everybody knows with this accent. I watched you all the time. You have won money for people and you've done a great job. So thank you, friends, all for being here. I love this book. Hank Phillippi Ryan is a USA Today bestselling author of 12 mystery novels. Hank has also won multiple prestigious awards for her crime fiction, 5 Agathas, 3 Anthonys, the Daphne, 2 McCavities, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. She is also the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH-TV. She's won 37 Emmys, which I can see behind you, 14 Edward R. Murrow Awards, and dozens of other honors for her groundbreaking journalism. National book reviews have called Hank a master at crafting suspenseful mysteries and a superb and gifted storyteller. I agree. Hank's novels have been named Best Thrillers of the Year by Library Journal, New York Post, BookBub, Pop Sugar, Real Simple Magazine, and many others. Her 2019 book is the acclaimed standalone psychological thriller, The Murder List. We sold a lot of those. A nominee for the prestigious Mary Higgins Clark Award, Agatha Anthony, and the McCavity Awards. Her newest book comes out this Tuesday, and we have plenty of copies.
Signed copies.
Is a chilling psychological standalone. The Publisher's Weekly star review says stellar. Hank Phillippi Ryan could win a 6th Agatha, and I totally agree. It is beautiful. And it was so cold in your novel, and it's 1,000 degrees here, and I was chilly. I got the chills.
That's great. It's really funny because, we're always writing our books, not necessarily in the season that the book is. So I have a yellow sticky on my computer when I was writing this book that said, it's cold. Because, when you think about it, that the cold really makes a difference in the story. And since you read it, how much difference that makes. So, but I have to remember people need coats and they need mufflers and they need scarves and it's going to be dark at 4:00 at night. So all that, there's going to be snow and footprints or not footprints and slick roads and all those kinds of things that you have to remember, and no place to park. It's Boston, right?
No place to park and your car is under 10 feet of snow.
Yeah. I remember once during a huge blizzard, the snow was so high that you honestly could not see the cars parked along the street. The snow was higher than the cars. And I was on book tour at the time and I was explaining to a cab driver, remember cabs? I was talking to a cab driver in Florida and I was saying the snow is higher than the cars. And then I thought, it was, here's Florida and palm trees. And I'm thinking, could that really be, that doesn't even seem like that could be true. But, there it was. So, yeah.
I don't really miss that. I was talking to my sister who's on here, and it snowed in May, and then it was 90 degrees in June. So you accurately portray the city. There's a lot of great food. The news is great. It is a great place to visit and then in July it gets nice. You can definitely go to the beach. But yes, so you're not originally. You what?
Once or twice.
Yes.
It's just like right now in Boston, it is so hot. It is completely sweltering. And our house is an old 1894 Victorian style house, and it's beautiful, but it's impossible to air condition. So when we have these sweltering days, it's really, we can just sit here and watch my hair get frizzy if we have nothing else to do.
Oh, me too. You look gorgeous. I was saying before that you don't age at all. So tell us, when you grew up in Indiana?
I did. I grew up in really rural Indiana in a town called Zionsville, which is in the middle of complete nowhere. I mean, back when I was growing up there, our house was so rural that you couldn't see another house from our house. And my sister and I used to ride our ponies to the library to get books. And we'd fill up the saddlebags with books and then read up in the hayloft of the barn behind our house. Truly. I mean, that's where I fell in love with reading, with Nancy Drew and Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie. It was up in that hayloft that I read Murder on the Orient Express for the first time when I was like maybe 12. And I thought, oh my golly, are you kidding me? How did she come up with that ending? And that time in Zionsville, which is now this bustling, chic, artsy, cultural community, but back then it was farmland. That was really the moment that I thought, maybe I could write a book like this. Maybe I could be a mystery author. I mean, I'd go to the library and there'd be books with pictures on, the author's pictures. And I really understood that there was a person behind those books. And I wondered if that could be me. But on the other hand, I also wondered whether it would be more fun to be a detective, to be Sherlock Holmes instead of writing about Sherlock Holmes. And I wonder if that's what sort of drew me toward journalism. Being a detective is like, being a journalist is like being a detective. They're very similar. And so it's just so funny that now, after all these years, adding crime fiction to my resume, and thinking about that little girl in the hayloft, not quite sure if she wanted to be a detective or be a novelist. And I turned out to be a little bit of each.
Yes, you did. So did that give you props too for being in the middle of nowhere and having something happen? Because I can just picture that, you're out on your horse or your pony and something happens. Did anything ever happen there like that? Or
Karen Slaughter always talks about it. It was my Anne of Green Gables upbringing or something like that, or Little House on the Prairie. I think that's what she says, Little House on the Prairie. And it was such a long time ago. Golly, that was 60 years ago, and it was just peace. I'm 70. It's sad. It's just peaceful. It was peaceful. Nothing really happened. We had the myths that everybody had, the goat killer who left his hook on the door and all those kinds of things. But, we would tell scary stories around the campfire when we were at camp about the pod people. But it was it felt very safe to me until the 60s, of course, when I started handing out, this is such a funny story. And you all are going to be so crazy thinking, what are they talking about? But I remember handing out pamphlets from door to door. We would ride our bikes to door and hand out pamphlets about how to build bomb shelters. And I remember I was so frightened of what was going to happen in this Cold War that I remember sitting on the couch sobbing to my mother. I was maybe 10 or 11, sobbing that I would never get to grow up and wear lipstick. So, there you have it. But I mean, I think that those thrillers like On the Beach and 7 Days in May and, those tense, taut Cold War thrillers, I loved those. And I think that's also what made me sort of gravitate toward writing thrillers and suspense as well as just mysteries. But no, there were except you're right. You know what? You always remind me of things. There was a night, it was one of my first dates. And I called from the payphone to see if we could stay out later than 10. And my mom said, no, you have to come home because the barn is burning down. And we did, and we came home, and the barn behind our house was on fire, just in flames. And the ladies' auxiliary of the Zionsville Fire Department was on the front lawn handing out lemonade and ham sandwiches to the firefighters who were putting out the fire. But the point of this is, and I know you're wondering, the point of this is, it turned out Kevin, seriously his name, Kevin next door, who was like 8, had set the barn on fire. And they found out that it was him, and that family moved soon after that. So now that you reminded me of that, that's not a bad idea.
That was big news when you're younger, though. Did you ever find out what happened to Kevin? We should Google him right now. No.
We should. I know it is a very small town. Craig Johnson says, hi, sweetheart. How very small town. Yeah, I mean, it is a very small town. It's just kind of interesting how there is that sort of milieu where there are the weird, strange people with this veneer of small town goodness, but not everyone is. And I do think that's why we write thrillers and mysteries, because you wonder, what about that person who lives next door? What are they really doing? And what's that sound in the night? Why is the light on so late? And why is somebody driving by our house slowly? You know, those of us with thriller imaginations can make those stories into being a novel. But there are real life sinister things that definitely do happen. So thanks for the memory about Kevin.
I could actually go with you and sit at the airport and just, make up a story about everybody. We should do that one day.
I love that. Remember the Simon & Garfunkel song, America? She, in one of the lyrics she says the man in the gabardine suit is a spy, and look out, his bow tie is really a camera. I mean, that kind of thing, making up stories about people. And you learn from watching people. I mean, you and I could go to the airport. Yes, I remember airports. You and I could go to the airport and, create scenarios for all of the people. Everybody has a story. I mean, that's one of the things about being a reporter, too. When I started out in broadcasting, my first television job, I was the feature reporter, not the serious reporter. I was the feature reporter, and they called me Something Out of Nothing Productions. And they would say, if there's nothing going on, send Hank out with the photographer, and she'll just find a story. Because everywhere you go, every place you go, everything you see is a wonderful story, if somebody is just willing to unearth it and tell it. And that is one of the joys of my life, to unearth the story, both as a journalist and as an author, because this is exactly what I do when I'm writing my novels, is I unearth the story.
Well, this book, you nailed it, because all of the characters are three-dimensional. They're not, black and white, somebody's good or somebody's bad. Like the mother and the daughter, who are some of the main characters in this book. The mom loved her daughter, but cold, and did a lot of horrible things, but you made her a sympathetic character. And I love that about every single one of these characters, because I loved them and hated them at the same time. And this has a grieving widow. It has a pharmaceutical company that's taking advantage of women who are trying to get pregnant, which is a horrible thing to go through anyways. And then you're on those IVF drugs that make your mind crazy. And it's just a whole hard thing. So you're bringing that all together with bad people and love. And it's just real romance.
I mean, there has to be, people say, could you write a thriller without romance? And I say, well, no, because there are real people in it. And when there are real people in a story, they do have feelings for each other. There are relationships. If they don't, even a lack of a relationship is a relationship. If they don't have a relationship, then they're not real people. Although I do have to admit to you that someone once said to me, well, could you write just a romance without a mystery? And I actually said, what would the people do if they didn't have a murder to solve? So I guess that I'm not really cut out to be the romance writer. Because there's this thing on Twitter where you're supposed to describe your book in 4 words. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to do. But I finally came up with betrayal, motherhood, obsession, and revenge. Mm-hmm. And that's the essence of the first to lie to me. And you'll notice that in those 4 words, I didn't say pharmaceutical company, because it's not, it's about that. That's the milieu. That's the setting, is this pharmaceutical company that may or may not be doing something bad, and what is bad anyway, and how much do we trust our doctors? And if the doctor says you should take this, you decide, but I think you should take this. How do we know? So it's a book about honesty and disclosure and trust and reliability, and who we trust and why, and what the consequences are, and what the consequences are of not having all the facts at our disposal, and how we should. And that's the thing. And I put this in the book so carefully, how much good pharmaceutical companies do, and what is the calculus that goes into that. If there's a thing that can help millions and millions and millions of people and can harm some, the key to that is letting the patient and the doctor decide with all the full disclosure of facts. So that's one thing that I was really careful of in the book. I'm a reporter, so I'm balanced. I'm a journalist. I'm trying to make this be balanced. And that's one of the things that translates into my books, that the bad guy isn't only bad, there's a motivation for it. Every single person thinks they're doing the right thing. Every single person thinks they're doing the thing that will help other people and themselves. And sometimes that gets complicated, and that's what makes a good story.
Mm-hmm. And then you have the rich people that, they're sailing, and there's so many different layers to it. It's just great.
Well, that's the other fun thing on social media is they say, describe your book in 5 things. 5 things now. So they can be longer, not just words. So I always say a devastating childhood betrayal, an undercover reporter who's in too deep, a beautiful sailboat on the Chesapeake Bay, a rich and powerful family, and an ice pick that is not used for ice. And that is the first to lie. So don't you think that? Exactly.
Do you listen to music? Actually, bringing up the music, do you listen to like a soundcast, or do you try to evoke a feeling with music while you're writing?
No, and if I have music, I am so distracted. It is really interesting. As a reporter, I've been a television reporter for 43 years. I'm still on the air here in Boston. And as a reporter, I have written stories in wet notebooks, in hurricanes, in snowstorms, with tear gas around me, and in the back of a truck on the way to an assignment, and I was in a nuclear reactor once writing a story, and people are yelling in the newsroom, and firefighters are yelling outside, and all kinds of chaos going on. And I can write a story as a news reporter. This is me writing. As a news reporter, I can write a story under any circumstances, just like, doesn't matter how noisy it is. But as an author, writing fiction, I kind of like to have it be quiet. I used to do some of my best work in airplanes when nobody was talking. These days, or these past days before, people had their earphones in, they were glued to silent televisions, and I'd just be in my little pod writing with no distraction. And that's my favorite. So here in my office, here in my study at home is where I write, and my only distraction is the big maple tree outside my window, where the squirrels, doing entertainment for me. But music, no, I can't have music, especially if it would have lyrics. Then it would just stick in my head. The only time I've ever successfully written to music was I was on a big deadline one summer, and we had gone out to Tanglewood in Western Massachusetts, where the Boston Symphony Orchestra plays outside, and it's beautiful. And I had a deadline, isn't it? Remember? It's just beautiful, wonderful, and the music just swells, and there's a place called The Shed, and everybody comes to hear Mozart and Beethoven, and it's really a treasure. So anyway, I was on a huge and super deadline, and I said to my husband and friends, I just can't go to the afternoon concert. I just can't go. I just have to work. I have to work. And they said, well, come and just sit at a picnic table way far away, and you don't have to be at the concert and sitting there listening, but you can just sit at the picnic table, bring your laptop, and work. So I did. So I could still hear the music. And I think it was Stravinsky's Fifth Symphony, which is very bellicose. And I was writing this big climactic scene, and I'm writing to the music, and the music was perfect, and the book is all the better for it. But when I tried to recreate that at home, it just didn't work.
No, there's no place like Tanglewood either. It's gorgeous there.
Gorgeous.
Yes. So can you tell me how you got the idea of this story?
Well, it's an interesting thing. 2 things. One is, when I was writing The Murder List, and thank you for saying that you sold a lot of those. I'm so pleased. It's a USA Today bestseller. I'm so happy. And it's the only book that was nominated for the Agatha Anthony McCavity and the Mary Higgins Clark Award. The only book that got all 4 nominations. So that's kind of great. Anyway, when I was writing The Murder List, someone in the murder list is talking to a police officer. And the police officer says, oh, thank you. Liz is saying, I love The Murder List. Thank you, Liz. That's so nice of you. In The Murder List, a police officer is saying to a person, to my main character, actually, I think, in Ellie, and the police officer is saying, no, that's wrong. Ellie is in the first line.
Yeah.
I know this. But the police officer is saying to Rachel in the murder list, the first to talk is the first to walk, meaning the first person to rat out their accomplice is the first person to get a lighter sentence. And Rachel in the book says, yeah, but what happens to the first to lie? And then I thought, oh, the first to lie. That's a good title for something. And it's interesting because, Rachel said it, but I thought of it. You know what I mean? So, and I thought of it as when I was being Rachel, which is how I write. I become the character. I thought of it as Rachel saying it, but then as me, Hank, the author, writing it, I realized it was a good title. So I had the title, bottom line, I had the title for this book before I had a story, before I had any story. So that's bizarre. But so how I got the actual idea for it is I have, as I said, I've been a reporter for a long time, and I've wired myself with hidden cameras and confronted corrupt politicians and gone undercover and in disguise and chased down criminals. And I was thinking about that undercoverness, how that when you go undercover, you really become someone else. And I thought, what if a person who was going undercover decided that being their undercover persona would be more valuable, more successful, they could get what they wanted if they were someone else instead of themselves? And how far would you go to get what you want? What if being someone else could get you what you wanted? And that was sort of the beginning of it. And then I wondered, and we were right in the midst of the peak of the opioid crisis. I mean, I know we're not through it, but we were just beginning to hear about it. And I wondered what if someone were in one of those big pharmaceutical families that was so under the gun and knew a secret about their family, that would be very valuable for the public to know, but it would ruin their family. What would you do? What would you do with that? And then what if that family had betrayed you in some way? How would that add to your motivation? Because that's the only thing that a good book is about: motivation. What does someone want, and how far will they go to get it? So I wondered, if someone was completely betrayed by someone they thought loved them, how far would they go to get revenge on that person? And what if it was someone in their own family? So then because I write cat and mouse thrillers, I realized there had to be two characters, a cat and a mouse, and the reader wouldn't know. So two strong women facing off in a high-stakes psychological cat and mouse game to prove their truth about this terrible betrayal. But which one is the cat and which one is the mouse? And which one will be the first to lie? Right?
Yeah.
And only one, if one of the revenge schemes works, the other one can't. So only one of the women can succeed. And when they do, the other has to fail. And so all those puzzle pieces, that's what went into it. But I had no idea what the book was going to be when I saw. I thought, okay, those are my puzzle pieces. What am I going to do? And I sat down and typed chapter 1, which was, and the first line is, lies have a complicated half-life, which obviously means a little vestige of that lie that you tell sticks around, no matter if you've changed your story or if you forget your story or if you decide you don't want to tell that lie anymore. The person who heard those lies and believed those lies still remembers those lies. So it's hard to live a life as a liar because there's just so much to remember.
And I love how you added the medical thing in there for a complicated. The half-life is medication. So I even love like the first part, the intro. It's just, it really like grabs you right away. I was up all night trying to read this book. Thank you very much. It's such a good book. I don't want to give too much away, and I feel like I always do. So I would love Was there anything like parts of things that you were investigating that are in this, or anything that was going on in
I
the team?
can tell you that without giving it away. Once when I was going undercover, we were doing a story about, in Massachusetts, when I was doing the story, when I was working on the story, there was no way for a potential patient to easily, somebody's saying, Sue, why is your video off?
Because I'm like,
I see you. It's not off. Okay, I'm going to keep typing.
I'm like a second behind, I think. So
What?
I'm like a second behind. Don't worry about me. It's all about you.
Yeah, all about me. I keep telling my husband that, and it turns out it's not true. So in Massachusetts at that time, thank you, Barbara, good. And in Massachusetts at that time, it was very difficult for a patient to discover whether a doctor had any malpractice cases, unless they looked them up in the court records. Because on the records in the Board of Registration in Medicine, that was not kept track of. Now, and we knew that many doctors have malpractice cases brought against them standardly. And we know that sometimes they also lose standardly. And it doesn't mean anything except the knowledge in itself. And it's all about disclosure. So I said but sometimes it's incredibly relevant. Sometimes it's a thing that at least a potential patient would want to know to be able to make a decision about it. So I talked to the head of the Board of Registration in Medicine at the time. And I said, well, how is a patient supposed to know whether a doctor has lost a lot of malpractice cases? And she said, they have to tell you. And I said, they have to tell you? Who's gonna make them tell you? And she said, they're just supposed to tell you. We rely on them to tell you. So I said, okay. So I dressed up as a woman who wanted to get pregnant. And my producer, a man, dressed up as her husband. And I sort of pulled my hair back, and I had big glasses and no makeup. You would not recognize me. A couple sweatshirts on, and we went to this doctor's office and had an appointment with him to see whether he would tell us that we knew he had many, many, many malpractice cases, and he lost many, many, many malpractice cases, and it was a bad thing. We wanted to see if he would tell us. So I had a hidden camera. We called them button cam. And the lens of the camera was about as big as a button. It's like a shirt button. And I had on this shirt, and in place of one of the buttons on the pocket, there was this lens. It was a camera lens. And then attached to the back of the lens was a cord to the camera, and the cord of the camera snaked down inside my sweatshirt. And then the guts of the camera were in a fanny pack that I was wearing, a really geeky looking fanny pack that I was wearing, with the camera rolling inside. And so what we were there to do was to find out whether this doctor would tell us the truth about how many malpractice cases he had. So we go through this whole, what do you call those things? Office visit, consultation. I knew this. And finally, near the end, I said, okay, so just wondering, have you had a lot of malpractice cases? I know it doesn't matter, and I know it's all fine, but just so I know, just for my own knowledge. And I forgot to tell you that in Massachusetts, you can't record someone's audio without their permission. So that makes it kind of a problem. But the audio was off. So I knew I needed to make his answer be very obvious, even without the voice. So I said, and you know how people mimic. So I said, could you just tell us, do you have any malpractice cases? Yes or no? Yes or no? To get him to do that, and he goes, oh, no. And I'm like, no? And he says, no. So we got this great video of him clearly saying, no, he has no malpractice cases, which was just a lie. I mean, it was just not true. And as a result of that story, they changed the law in Massachusetts to require doctors to disclose their malpractice cases and the outcomes of those cases. So it's easier, at least, for patients to find out those answers, because we had proved with that office visit and several others that the doctors were not going to tell you as they were supposed to. And so it made me think, and that was a long time ago, but it made me think about how much people rely on what their doctors tell them to be true. And what does true even mean? Truly true? Or they want it to be true, or true as far as they know, or true as far as somebody has told them, or, just there's so many layers of it. So part of what I want out of this book is, I want you to miss your stop on the bus because you're reading the papers so fast, or stay up, Sue, like you did, which is very reassuring. But I want you to come out of the book saying, the next time I go to the doctor's office, I'm going to ask about this. I want to empower people to stand up for themselves when they're in that very vulnerable situation. And just ask, why am I taking this? What are the side effects? What could have there ever been any problems with this? We sign those things all the time, right? And it just, always makes me wonder. So that was sort of the essence of it. None of that is in the book, if you know what I mean. My undercover isn't like, it's just, but that's what happens when, you talk about getting ideas from growing up in Zionsville. My books are not my TV stories, are not my TV stories made into fiction. Yeah. They are all sort of an amalgam of all the experiences that I've had all these years, and all the authenticity and all the genuine knowledge of what goes on with a reporter and an undercover reporter, and puts that all together into this new, fast-paced, compelling, riveting, I hope, story. I mean, there is, the sort of background is the pharmaceutical industry, for which I did a tremendous amount of research and talked to a tremendous amount of people. And then I just put all that away. I just forgot about it all and, tucked it in the back of my brain, and then just wrote the book because I didn't want to keep punching you with facts, but I wanted the reality and the legalities and any illegalities, I know this, illegalities to just seamlessly be in the book. So not like I'm telling you something, you should know this. Yeah. Like, here is a world, it's not a textbook. Right. Exactly. Yes.
How did it feel to go undercover? Did you ever have to do something where you knew the person, but you didn't expect to? Like, there's something that happened in this book like that, where somebody's undercover and they bump into somebody. I want to go undercover. Can I just hang out with you one day and just?
The thing about going undercover is you have to, and this is sort of relevant to the book too, you have to really believe that you are who you're pretending to be. 99% of your brain is that you are who you are pretending to be, because your reactions and your answers and your actions have to connect with who you're supposed to be. I was undercover with an intern once, such a silly idea, but we had no other choice. I was the mom and she was my college daughter, and we were going to a place that was supposed to be a puppy mill. We had heard was a puppy mill where this guy was breeding puppies in these Dickensian horrible conditions. So my intern and I saunter in with hidden cameras, and her job was to distract the puppy salesman while I, with my hidden camera, got all the pictures of the place and the puppies and the squalor and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And at one point, so there's puppies on the floor, and I'm getting pictures of the puppies on the floor with my little hidden camera, which is right here. So, I'm walking like this very carefully and getting the pictures. Craig says it's method acting. It is totally method acting, totally. Yeah. So I hear my intern say to the guy, what's the mother dog's name? And the guy says, dog doesn't need a name. It's just a dog. And so at which point my intern burst into tears and said, the dog doesn't have a name. How can you do this without the dog has to have a name? And I'm like, oh, no. There's no crying in undercover. There's no crying in undercover work. So, but instead of being me, the reporter, I had to be me, her mom, right? Because that's who I was. So I went up to her and said, oh, sweetheart, and I said to the guy, I'm so sorry. She's very emotional about things. That's why we want a puppy for her. She's gets so attached to things. So, be so, please be understanding about my poor dear daughter. And he was very suspicious. I guess, since then, after that, it was just not the same. And we left soon after, because I kind of think he suspected something was wrong. But the point was, I played her mom at that point. I didn't try to talk my way out of it or explain anything. I just tried to be the person that he expected me to be. And that's really the key of it. And in the book, the thing about going undercover is you would think somebody would recognize you. But in the book, there's never a moment when that might happen. Mm-hmm. And that's something that when you read the book, you'll really see, is that it's very carefully set up so that does not ever happen. I can't go any farther.
Yeah. I've actually had people give me the crazy look because I've had things like that happen. So maybe he just thought, like, these people are crazy.
Yeah, I was hoping. Being crazy can really help you.
It can. I can verify that. Do you have a funny story that you did for investigating? Like something I was telling you, and I talked a little bit about, we had somebody come in and ask if you were a funeral home, and you said you had something like that.
Well, it's not really that. That reminded me of, we were doing a story.
That's even funny, but yeah.
Well, we really, what happened to me, it's really more a story about me and what I did rather than what somebody else did. Two things. One is, once I was anchoring the weekend news, and they tell you to read what's on the prompter, no matter what it said, no matter what. We all have our scripts in front of us that have what we're supposed to say. We know what we're going to say, but there's the prompter rolling in front of us, and the prompter has papers in it. When in the old days, back when this happened, the prompter was like a conveyor belt that paper moved by under a mirror, under another mirror that showed up in the screen of the camera. So if you're looking right in the camera like this, you're seeing the words you're supposed to say. So they would say, don't look at your scripts unless it's an emergency. Look at the prompter, because we might change what's in the prompter. So what your scripts might be wrong because there might be breaking news or something different. So look at the prompter and read the prompter. So I was filling in for someone on the weekend as an anchor person, and the prompter, and they apparently hadn't changed the paper on the prompter for the generic, like toss to weather, toss to sports, because that's just ad lib. So you just say toss to a break, and you just make up what to say. But in the end, another one that they left was the goodbye, which my co-anchor read and said, thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm R.D. Saul. And I read what was on the prompter, which was, and I'm Kate Sullivan, which I wasn't. I said that I was someone else because I read the prompter, and I just said, no, I'm not Kate Sullivan. How can you call yourself the wrong name? You would just think that wasn't going to happen. So
yeah.
You would never think that was going to happen. And the other thing is that, and I'll tell you this real fast. The other thing is that I was doing a story about, not undercover, about this wedding photographer. And I know this sounds so silly, but he was a bad guy he took money for taking videos of people's weddings, which they relied on him to do. And then he would never give them the video. So, this one thing that they had to remember their wedding, the video, he was keeping from them. So I found out where he was going to be. And he went upstairs to the place that he was going. And I was staked out in the lobby of this building with two photographers, just in case. So one photographer with me and one photographer outside, in case I didn't get him going out, the photographer outside would get him a picture of him going out. So he comes down the stairs, and I go forward toward him with my microphone, and he sees me, and he just pushed me down, pushed me out of the way, pushed me down to the ground, and ran out of the building. Well, that was silly because my photographer is, of course, rolling, and the photographer outside is, of course, rolling. And, of course, the sound is on because the camera is out, and he knew it was there. So all I'm thinking was, oh, this is great video. This is great. You never see a reporter get pushed down by a guy. And so I was really happy with this. So we sent this to the station right away, and they said, we're going to put this on TV right away. They said, but we're also going to put what you said when he pushed you down. Oh. And I said, I didn't say anything. And they said, oh yeah, you did. And so I thought, oh, I have no idea what I said. And so I said, okay. And I figured, well, if you can put it on TV, it must not be that bad. And I remember when they played it, I was so happy because my mother would have been so proud of me and our lawyers, because I said, please, sir, don't push me, which not only was polite, but indicated that he had pushed me, in that moment, in that one moment that he had pushed me. So we had evidence and politeness, and also evidence of how well brought up I was, right?
And you don't remember saying it.
No, I don't remember saying it at all. And that's another thing that's sort of authentic about my books. There's no graphic sex, there's no graphic violence, and there's no inappropriate language from reporters. Because we try not to use inappropriate language in our real lives, because when something like that happens, and it will, those synapses are easily jumped in your brain, and you'll say something that can't go on the air. So people laugh at me for not swearing, and I say I just can't, because I never know what I'm going to be live, and so a light falls on me.
Yeah.
So, and you can't say it. So there's a little inside scoop, something that you probably didn't need to know about.
No, I find that fascinating. I wish I had that on-off switch sometimes, but
well, you can never turn it off. I mean, you can never. I'm sorry, you can never turn it on. You can never turn it on. That's what you have to do.
Wow. So I see a lot of people on the side here making comments that you should write a nonfiction book, which I agree with, because your stories are fascinating. Really.
That's so nice of you to think of. Thank you, Liz. Yeah. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Jean. But I just don't remember enough. If only I remembered more about it. So we can talk. My mom was very proud, Claire. She brought me up. It's fun to talk about things like this, but I think, it's interesting because The First to Lie is all about going undercover. And it allows me as a reporter to come out from undercover and tell you how I really feel about things. Because as a reporter, every day I'm kind of undercover, right? I'm not letting you know how I feel about things, or how difficult the story was, or how I really feel about the person that I'm interviewing, or what I left out of the story and why I decided to do that, or how many lawyers have looked at it, or what outside pressures are on me to do the story a certain way or not, or the time. If I shoot 15 hours of an interview and I use 2 minutes, how do I choose what 2 minutes those are? You'll never know that if you watch the story on TV. But because the reporter is undercover in journalism, right? Reporter is undercover in journalism. But in fiction, I can come out from undercover, and I can say to you, this is what this is really like. Now you can be in Ellie's head and find out what it's like to do this.
Wow. Well, you did a great job. And I remember watching you on the news in Boston, and you were always such a professional, and people would really give you a hard time even on the news. And you got those snippets that you were always polished. So I do admire you a great deal. And now that I'm reading your books, I admire you even more, because they're phenomenal. And you won't.
Thank you. Say phenomenal again. I'll take your picture to the news.
So I just want to say there is a green button on the bottom if anybody would like to buy the book or some older books. I do have some book plates, and I really thank all my friends and family for being on here. And Hanks, we're all new friends. Anybody who reads is a friend. We're gonna take a couple questions, unless you want to read something from the book.
No, they can read the book. It's fine.
Okay.
Right? You don't want to hear reading. It's too. You've been around. It's been 47 minutes. Hi, Roberta from Boston.
That's Auntie Berta.
Oh, hey.
From August. All right. So, Dave, do you want to go ahead and ask questions?
I sure could.
But I want to see your face, though. So does Auntie Berta.
Nope. Off camera. I am off camera talent. So.
Come on.
But you look good.
So, all right. So the first question is from Anissa, and it is, if you could travel somewhere with your favorite character, which character would it be, and where would you go?
Oh, come on! Too hard. I remember when I was a little girl, I was in love with Lord Peter Wimsey, and I really loved that character. I wish I could go I mean, I wish I could be Agatha Christie. Could I take an author and go somewhere with Agatha Christie, find out where she was during those 2 weeks that she was, that would be really nice. Oh my gosh, where would I go with the character? Okay, and this is saying I can go with Agatha. Good, yeah, I mean, that would be really good. There's a wonderful book, I don't know if you have it, Sue and Dave, but you should check it out, called The Talent for Murder by Andrew Wilson. Do you think it's so good? And it has Agatha Christie as the main character, and it talks about where she might have been during those 2 weeks. He's really a fun author. So she's completely fascinating to me.
Yeah.
She was fascinating too.
Yeah. And with Sue Grafton's Kinsey Malone. That'd be fun to go out on a case with Kinsey. That would be, although we'd only have to, I'm not sure I would like her peanut butter and pickle sandwiches.
Ugh, no, it's not good. So Caroline wanted to know, why would you choose Boston as the location for the story?
I know it so well. Yeah. I know the neighborhoods, and I know what it's, the downstairs of the State House and behind the scenes of the courthouse. And I've been to the prisons and the, Boston Common and the Public Garden, and the harbor with the seagulls, and the and Cambridge with all of its wonderful universities, and how much history is in Boston, and the different neighborhoods, and as we were talking at the beginning, the weather. I mean, I know it. I know that the air conditioner in front of Number 9 Park, the condenser drips on your head when you walk by. Right? You've seen it. You have trouble.
Yeah.
And you present it perfectly too. I was like, oh yeah.
So I mean, it's funny. There was a moment where a couple of weeks ago, when my husband and I guess it was months ago, husband and I were on the Mass Turnpike, and we passed exit 17, and I said, "Oh, exit 17. This is where Jane was chased by the bad guy." And then I thought, no, I made that up. That's in a book. So it's just all very confabulated together about what's real and what's not real. But if it does feel real to you, that's really great.
Yeah.
I think that having that depth of knowledge of the place too is just, you have to know so many other things. Like you said, you had to do all that research on pharmas and all these other stuff that you need to make sure you're keeping all the details straight. The last thing you'd want to do is put your people in an unfamiliar place where all of a sudden you're making a turn that's not possible or something like that.
Exactly.
That's going to rip somebody out of the story.
That can blow it for us.
Yeah.
So
yes.
You do it right.
There's tiny little bit of a critical, but that's your drink is so funny. A critical but tiny little part. A critical but part of the book. It takes place in Chesapeake Bay, Maryland, and I did a tremendous amount of research by talking to people who live there. About even what beer to have. What beer would somebody have that would be authentic? Because those are the things, although and if you look at the acknowledgments of the book, you'll see that I have said there'll be times when I tweak Boston geography a little bit. You don't want to have somebody killed in a hotel that really exists. Open up the geography and put in a street that isn't there. You don't want to say the murder happened at 123 Marlborough Street, and the person who lives at 123 Marlborough Street says, "No, there wasn't a murder in my house." So,
right.
In order to avoid those kinds of situations, it's a little tweaked. But what's authentic is authentic. Yep. What's authentic is authentic.
It is.
So Caroline also wanted to know what comes first, the story or the title, and I think we had the the example here that the title came first with The First to Lie, but in general.
And it came first with The Murder List as well. With The Murder List, I wanted to do a TV show that there was a series of criminal defense attorneys, public defenders, taking on a new case every week, every week on TV. And there's a real thing in Boston called the Murder List, which is the list of lawyers who are experienced and qualified enough to be assigned to take on cases of indigent clients and indigent murder defendants. So these are people who don't get paid very much, but it's a big case. It's a big life and death, well, not death, but life in prison case. Okay. So Massachusetts rightly figures that everybody deserves the best defense. And so the Murder List is the list of lawyers who are qualified and benevolent enough to take on those appointed murder cases. The murder list is what it's called. My husband is on it. So I said to my, and we'll talk about that. And I said to my editor, oh yeah, my husband's on the murder list. And she says, and I was pitching this television show. And she says, I don't care about television, but the murder list is your next book title. And I said, okay, but I had no idea what that was about either.
Very cool. Kate Rock, who's awesome. She said, "You're so creeptastic when you get in the zone of writing. Where does your inspiration come from?" Fear
of missing my deadline. My inspiration comes from fear of missing my deadline. There's no question about that. Where I'm sitting here fearful right now. I don't know. Gina's saying, "Hi, Kate Rock." Hi, Kate Rock. I don't know what's going to happen in my book until I write the next line or the next sentence or the next paragraph or the next scene. So the only way I know what's going to happen in my book is to sit down and write that. And so that's what gets me to the computer every day, Kate, is I think I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder what's going to happen. And I won't know until I write it.
So
when people say, talk about it, when the people say, wow, the end of the first to lie, the middle of the first to lie, all the way through the first to lie, wow, you really surprised me. I'm like, yeah. Talk about a surprise. I surprise myself every time. And that is really one of the joys of writing.
So we talk to a lot of different authors, and we always ask about, their process. And it sounds to me like you're not one of those ones who has the giant board with all the Post-it notes, and you're moving story plot lines around, and you're it's happening. Is it the character speaking to you kind of in your head?
If I'm lucky, they're speaking to me. I mean, it really is what Craig was sort of saying earlier about method acting. I just sort of become the character, and I know what the character wants, and I see what they're going to do, what obstacles they're going to. I mean, action is the conflict that drives the book. Conflict is the engine that drives the book, right? That something's going to happen. You've got to make something happen, and the reason something happens is because somebody wants something, and they go after it, and then there's an obstacle in their way, and then they make a decision about how to get around the obstacle because their goal is to get to the end. So my job as a reporter is to put them on the road to getting what they want, what they think they want, for better or worse, right? And it might change as the book goes on. So they're on the road to what they think they want, and then I put up an obstacle, whether it's the snow or a guy with a gun or a slick road or somebody who says no or they get fired or whatever it is. Something happens to them, but then they have to solve that problem and go on. So that's, it's not. I mean, I wish devoutly every time I write that I had an outline. I wish I did. And I always say, someday when I grow up,
I don't need you to.
I have an outline. But I can't do it I can't write the outline because, as I've said to my editor, how do I know what's going to happen until it happens?
Love it. That's great.
So, I love that. I've heard people say they wrote something and they didn't remember writing it. Like you said, when you didn't remember talking, it's like they just write and it just flows, and like they didn't know the characters were going to. I love that. It's Absolutely. Like a whole out-of-body experience.
That's the best thing. That's the best thing that could ever happen. I mean, get up the next morning.
No drugs involved. No drugs involved.
No drugs involved. No, you can't. I mean, that is.
No.
I mean, you get up in the morning and look at your pages from the day before, and I often think, oh, okay,
wow.
That's surprising, and it just doesn't feel like me. Some days it does. Some days it's like no.
Yeah.
No.
That's when it's snowing in May.
What?
I said that's when it's snowing in May that you're like.
Snowing in May.
All right, so we've got one more. It's you've been a journalist for over 40 years, which honestly, that's pretty amazing.
I can't believe you're 70.
No.
Yeah,
you look amazing.
But now that I think of it, I grew up in the Boston area too. So we grew up watching you. So that's really cool. That's really cool.
We were 30, but
yeah, right. Now, did you? So Barbara wanted to know: did you just one day decide you wanted to write a book along with being a journalist, and how do you have time to manage both of those things?
I know.
Demanding.
That's a good question because yes, you heard about when I was younger, I sort of thought about being, But one day, and I remember it, I just did have a really good idea for a book. I mean, I just knew it was. And I came home and I said to my husband, I just have a really good idea for a mystery, and I'm going to write a mystery. And Jonathan says, great, honey. Do you know how to write a book? And I'm like, how hard can it be? I've read 1 million of them. I mean, I remember this moment, and he does too. And it was so funny, but I soon learned how hard it could be. But I knew it was a good idea. I mean, I just knew it was. And I was obsessed, and I was just compelled. And I was writing. And I was so naive that I didn't realize how hard it should be. So I'm just thinking, oh, you're good, sister. You're a natural. And my first draft was 723 pages long, which shows you how much I didn't know what I was doing. So I had to cut 400 pages from it. But that turned out to be Prime Time, which my first book, which won the Agatha for Best First Novel, which you can probably see a teapot, one of those behind me is the Agatha for Best First Novel. And that was the beginning of my career. So Barbara, yeah, it really was. One day I just had a good idea. It was kind of crazy.
That's amazing.
So tell us about working with your husband too, because I found that fascinating. Because Dave and I are like yin and yang. He does IT. I don't like it.
Oh,
but we work together. And
yes. Well, my husband is a criminal defense attorney, lucky for me. And, I help him write his closing arguments, because in a murder case, a closing argument is who tells the better story with the evidence that is given. So I work with him on his closing arguments. And he is my legal advisor. I mean, I could not do these books without in-house counsel. So he reads every single one of my books. I check with him about, the law and what a judge would do and what would happen behind the scenes in a courthouse and what it would be like in a jury room and all those kinds of things. I mean, I know some of it, but he knows the super inside scoop of the bad things and the good things that go on that I might not ever know. So I check with him, would somebody really do this? Could this really happen? What does the law say about this? What would a lawyer tell a person to say in this particular situation? And it's also funny because usually in the past, when I've been writing at home and he's at work, remember those days, in his law office, remember those days, I would call every day at like 3 p.m. and say, sweetheart, it's me with the legal question of the day. And then I would give him my question that happened, that whatever happened emerged in the manuscript that day. So we're really, really a good team.
Yeah. I have one more question. I actually have two, but I can remember one right now. I wanted to know how it is to have your 13th book come out during a pandemic.
12th. This is my 12th. There's two good questions.
The 13th.
Isn't it? I think it's my 12th. But I'm writing the 13th.
Oh, it is.
And
sorry.
That is also a really good question. Writing the 13th. Having the 12th book come out in the pandemic, I sort of feel like, it is what it is. I mean, we're all in this together, and I cannot complain about
your book launch.
It is. It's a different kind of book launch, but look, we're doing this, and we get to be
on my bathroom wall. So usually the author will sign our bathroom wall because we're classy. So you will have to come back and do that.
I promise I will. I can't wait to do that. That'll be first on my list. But, we do get to be together, and, reading about my book tour being canceled seems so whiny and bad. So I'm happy. I'm embracing this. I love the virtual tours. I love getting to see, I'm looking at your comments now. I love getting to see all of you who are here and meeting all of you. It just wouldn't have happened, otherwise like this. I'd be on a plane. I'd be packing. I'd be saying goodbye to my husband, all those kinds of things. So it's fine. Writing my 13th book in the pandemic, that is a situation that has been, frankly, I can tell you, very, very difficult because there's this veneer of terror over everything. And it's very hard I say though, it's always safe inside a book. It's always safe inside a book, whether you're writing it or whether you're reading it, because you get to be somewhere else. And right now that is so important, isn't it? And so, perfectly timed to have a book launch in order to say to someone, here is a safer world for you. Here is a place you can be inside the first to lie. And that's what I offer.
And everybody should get this book. Again, the buy the book is on the bottom. We can mail it to anybody. No carrier pigeons anymore, and we're not doing that. We have signed book plates also. And I can't thank you enough. You've made my dreams come true because, watching you, like, you're a big deal, and I can't believe somebody pushed you down. I want to go after them. But
the video is still on Channel 7, I think, actually. It's a classic moment in Hank history.
We are going to rebroadcast this at the end of the week. So everybody tell your friends I couldn't be here today. We will broadcast us on YouTube and our channel. Again, the book by Hank Phillippi Ryan, The First to Lie. It wasn't me, but cheers to you. I hope you sell a lot of books. And remember, reading a real book, not the video or any ebooks or anything, will lower your stress level by 68% in 10 minutes. And anything on ebooks will up your anxiety and depression. So have a martini, get a book, and delve into it.
You need to hold that up one more time because I need to take a picture of your martini in the book. Oh, I did it wrong. Wait a minute. Oh, you all are going to have to sit with me while I do this. One more time, Sue. Congrats. Okay, I think I got it.
All right. Cheers. Dirty water martini.
All of you who are commenting, thank you so much for coming. It's just been amazing to see you all. Find me on Instagram. Find me on Facebook. Find me on Twitter. I'm on Instagram and Facebook way too much. It's ridiculous. Please, if you love the book, leave a review, a good review. It's no pressure. It's just my career, but it makes a really big difference. And support your independent bookstore right here. Signed book plates for you. So Sue and Dave brought this to you. And
I can't wait to have you come in store, and I can't thank you enough for being here. And cheers to you, and good luck with the tour and the new book and the number 13 coming out next year, I hope.
I hope.
Yes. All right.
Thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and weekend, and wash your hands.
Yes. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sue. Love you all.
Thank you.